Hello, I'm Lucy from Bookshanks and I'm here today to talk about these two books from the Booker Prize Shortlist. Hello, welcome back to our channel where we are reading our way, kind of, a little bit, through the Booker Prize 2019. Please do hit subscribe if you'd like to come along for the ride. Now, last week, the shortlist was announced, and it probably isn't an enormous surprise that we didn't actually get that many right. We got 2 out of 6. Partly, I think, probably because we hadn't read enough to make a rounded comparison, but also a bigger part, I think, because I personally didn't feel like I had any handle on what the judges were looking for at all this year. You know, sometimes, in these prizes, people sort of go along a theme, or you just get sort of like a gut feel. You understand what they're looking for. This year, didn't have the foggiest idea. So the books that made the cut were Quixote by Salman Rushdie, Girl, Woman, Other by Bernadine Evaristo, The Testaments by Margret Atwood, which nobody's still read yet, comes out tomorrow, filming this on a Monday. Today, by the time you read it, I might be reading it right now. That's exciting. Completely forgotten what the other books are. 10 minutes and 38 seconds, which I read and quite liked, but didn't absolutely love. An Orchestra of Minorities, same, liked, didn't love. And, oh, what was the other one? Can't even remember. Oh, Ducks, Newburyport by Lucy Ellmann, the mammoth one, which we may never, ever get around to reading, ever. So that is what is on the list. I'd love to know your thoughts on it. My initial thought, and probably still my thought, is just is a little bit safe, isn't it? There weren't any massive surprises in there. There was nothing gasp-worthy, but there sort of kind of wasn't anything gasp-worthy on the long list either. So, I'm putting my money on Atwood, even though I haven't read it. I might come back and revise that. Don't hold me to that in a court of law. Anyway, books this week, read these two. And that is what I'm here to talk about today. I'm going to start with this one, Salman Rushdie's Quixote. 2 disclaimers up front I think are required. One, I have never read Salman Rushdie before. Never read him. No point of comparison whatsoever. Also, this is a modern retelling of Don Quixote. That heralded literary classic, which I've also not read. Not only have I not read it, I don't even really know what it's about. Not gonna lie, not brilliant with the classics. Know nothing. So, in terms of this review, I will not be casting any judgment whatsoever on that aspect of it. Whether it's a good retelling, a bad retelling, or anything in between, don't have a clue. Did I like this book? Oh, it's a weird one, folks. It's a weird one. Right, it follows a travelling salesman in America of Indian origin. He has been recently fired from his job. He lives in motels. He's addicted to trashy reality TV, and he falls in love with one of the stars. And he decides to journey across America whilst writing her letters and profess, he handwrites them, he didn't type them, and profess his love to her. And obviously she's going to return it, and it's all going to be fabulous. And that in itself is an interesting premise for a book. However, it incredibly quickly becomes apparent that actually that is not the whole premise of this book, because there's an extra layer, because actually this Ismail Smile, the character, is in fact a character in another book, a book being written at the next level up by a struggling, bit rubbishy crime writer who feels compelled to move away from his normal writing and sort of write a bit of a confessional book starring this travelling salesman lusting after reality TV star. Now actually, I quite like the premise of that. I like the idea of a book within a book. And there were times when I thought it worked really quite well, because sort of inevitably, I guess, their lives kind of sort of intertwine a bit, go on a path that's not, wholly unpredictable in terms of the writer sort of kind of living out a little bit through his characters. But then it gets even weirder. So it's like this another layer to it, which is the narrator, who sort of goes over everything within the book And basically it's Salman Rushdie. You know, I mean, you could just hear him talking the entire way through. I mean, to the point where there's like footnotes and he's referencing other parts of the book and being like, hang on, you'll find out about that later. And I kind of don't know whether I'm describing this in a coherent way, because that for me was where this book slipped into a little bit more than bizarre and not quite good. Well, I don't know. It's a hard one, folks. It's a hard one because it might not be Salman Rushdie talking. It might be another narrator, but I just couldn't get the feeling out of my head that I was being preached to by the narrator. Kind of preached to, actually, sort of when he's discussing you know, sort of the big themes of the novel, about sort of, which is, it's a satire of, you know, contemporary society in America and the UK and India, particularly sort of looking at issues around immigration and truth, I guess, as well. Belief, whether, you know, seeing is believing and everything is exactly as it appears. Particularly when he was sort of talking, or the book was talking about these themes, it slipped into sort of passages of explanation where I just thought, this is the author talking. And also where I thought, this is the author trying to show me just how clever he is, just how incredibly clever he is. And he might be. I mean, you know, he's probably not stupid, but I felt like he was so desperate for the reader to know how clever he was, and also how funny he was. And there's a lot of jokes in there. I saw a reviewer describe them as dad jokes, and I was like, yes, he has nailed it, because there were a lot of instances where I'm like, that is almost funny, and I can see you're trying to be funny, but you're not quite as funny as you think you are. So almost funny is probably the way that I would describe it. And actually that sounds really negative, that sort of looking at the book through those eyes. And hearing that narrator, sort of that third level, so, you know, travelling salesman, struggling writer, Rushdie, that was the frustrating level. But actually that bit I didn't dislike, you know, and I could sort of go along for the ride. But the feeling that I couldn't shake, despite this being enjoyable, all right, fair enough, was like, would this be anywhere near the Booker list if it wasn't Rushdie? And yeah, we can go back to my disclaimer and say I haven't actually read any of others of him, so I can't comment on that, but I just thought he's such an enormous name, and this is such an ambitious novel that I didn't feel quite pulled off that level of ambition. I just thought, if you were a less well-known writer, would you be on this list? I don't know. So that was my thoughts on Salman Rushdie's Quixote. If you have read this book, I would love to know what you think. If you've also read Don Quixote or know the story, would love to know how that relates. Please do talk to me in the comments below. Now, next up, I read Girl, Woman, Other by Bernadine Evaristo, and this book was a completely different experience in so many ways. Firstly, because I really, really liked it. There was no doubt in my mind as to whether I liked this book and how much I liked it. It's a pretty special thing and a pretty unusual thing. It follows 12 characters, most of whom are black women. And each chapter of the novel, or each like section of the novel, is dedicated to one of their stories, to sort of us getting to know them and them getting to know themselves a little bit in their section. Each of the sections intertwines in a really subtle way, so each just melts sort of seamlessly into the next, and even though sort of they are not interlinked, there isn't like an overarching plot or a story that binds them all together. They are all sort of intrinsically linked, and you just feel that sort of gentle melting. You're just eased so beautifully from one person to the next that I just felt it was so coherent and the whole way through, and so complete, and I just absolutely loved that. The women themselves, or the characters themselves, were also absolutely fabulously drawn. They are so complex and they have such conflicting conflicting feelings and such conflicting actions, and the way that they're constructed, that they were totally believable. And I guess actually, you know, there are similarities to Rushdie's book in a way. So immigration is a theme that comes up a lot, and love and friendship, and also obviously like the female experience and feminism, which isn't really touched upon by Rushdie, is much more prominent in here. But when those messages and those themes are explored, they're done so in a way that is integrated completely and utterly into the characters, rather than sort of those big long passages of, is it exposition? I don't know, just passages, just talking. And that to me is much more clever and much more subtle, and you know, it's not showy offy, is it? It's not. I loved it. Related to that, and related to the characters and sort of the way that they're formed, is another enormous difference between this book and Rushdie's book. And it's actually the fact that in this book, the narrator and the author is completely invisible. You know, in my mind, I just completely and utterly lost that this was an act of fiction, that someone had created this, that you know, someone was choosing words and how to construct sentences and things like that, which pull you out of the moment in Rushdie's book. At no point did I feel like I could hear the author speaking. I heard the characters, because everything is so deeply embedded, and that is like a really skillful thing to do and a really special thing to do, and I really, really liked it. The other thing which is really good about this book is it's like written in verse. It's written in a way that is just crying out to be read out loud. I bet if anyone's listened to the audiobook of this, is it brilliant? It's got to be brilliant, hasn't it? It sounds brilliant. I just wanted to read the passages out loud. You know, I could hear them in my head, the way that it's structured and it flows, and it just creates this pacing which is just beautiful and sort of slows it down. But not to an extent where, you know, you're thinking, come on, hurry up a little bit, which happens sometimes. It just paces it beautifully, and also allows sort of that melting between the characters and that consistency and sort of that rhythm that sort of rolls you forward. You feel like you're sort of riding a bit of a wave as you're passing through these characters, this sort of gentle bobbing on the water type of thing. And I loved the style in which it was written. I really, really liked it. The one gripe that I have is just a total personal taste thing, and other people will just completely disagree with me, but I do, I am a sucker for an overarching plot. I am, and this doesn't have that. I do like when there's, you know, a story, and so having sort of each of the characters melt into each other but be completely distinct at the same time does leave me just ever so slightly unsatisfied. And that's why this book for me isn't, you know, going to be up there, you know, in my forever fantastic books, because I just, you know, I want that holy grail of, you know, plot and character and writing and everything. It's so hard to find, isn't it? But yeah, that is just total personal taste, and I appreciate that other people, you know, won't be bothered by that even in the slightest. And it, you know, it wasn't enough to stop me enjoying it, because there is just so much to love about this book. It is a real belter, and I hadn't read it before the shortlist was announced, obviously, but I am not surprised in the slightest, having read it now, that it's there. And I think it probably is my favourite read of them so far. Is it? I really like Lanny as well. I don't know. I'll come back to that. I'm not committing. But anyway, that's what I've read. The Testaments is coming through the post box tomorrow, along with completely different, the new Stephen King book. So yes, this is like a great new book week. So I will be back shortly to review both of those when I've read them. I think they're both pretty big bricks, so I make no promises about when that'll be. But I hope you are having a fabulous week, reading something brilliant. Please do tell me what it is. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.